if you're taking your jigs straight out of the package, tying them on and going fishing with them, you are really doing yourself a disservice. You're probably leaving more fish in the water and less fish go into your live well. So I'm going to show you exactly. I am a big time jig guy. I'm a big believer in it. I believe sometimes it does get bit more than others, but most of the time when you get bit on a jig, it's a quality fish, and that's what you need for tournament fishing. You need those quality fish, and the jig helps give you that. But there's a few things, 3 or 4 things that I do to every single jig before I put it in my box, and I'm going to show you that. This here is just a simple black and blue jig from Dirty Jigs tackle. So we'll open it up. Let's have a look at it. Again, nothing fancy, simple black and blue. And there you go. You could go fishing with this. You could tie this on, put on your favorite trailer, and maybe catch some. This is a 3/8 ounce jig. Again, it looks really good. It'll work in a whole bunch of different water types of situations. But there's a couple of things that I have got to do to this before I even get started with it. Very first thing, I have never seen a jig with a perfect weed guard. They're either too light or they're either too strong, too long, too short, whatever. And Dirty Jigs is no exception. They make a great product, but that weed guard, to me, is too stiff, and most of them are. I think you'll miss some fish with using the weed guard the way it comes from the factory, or the way it comes from the manufacturer. It's just too stiff for me. I mean, it takes me a good amount of pressure to put that down, and I realize when a bass bites, he's usually going to bite much harder than what the amount of pressure I'm using here on my finger. But I think by trimming down this weed guard to about half, maybe 60% of what is there now, your hookup percentage is much, much, much better. And like I said, I'm a jig guy. I've been using a jig a lot over the last 3 years or so, and I've learned a lot, and I have found that trimming down this weed guard makes a major, major difference. So I'm going to do that. This is fresh out of the package. All you need here is a good pair of scissors. Serrated scissors work best, the same kind of scissors you cut braided line with. And I've taken approximately about half off, maybe about 40% of the strands that are off. I don't really get into I don't count the fibers here, but I take about half. I just kind of feel it with my finger, and truth be told, I probably need to take one more to get it how I like it. That feels about right. Then we'll simply just cut that thing off way down here. Easy stuff, nothing difficult. So that's much lighter there, and it's still going to give you protection from coming through cover and grass and some sticks and that kind of thing, but it's lighter. It's going to collapse better in that bass's mouth for you. Next thing I do, this one here isn't too bad, but I've seen some weed guards that extend all the way out past the edge of the hook here. The good rule of thumb is your weed guard, when collapsed down, needs to be halfway between the barb and then the point of the hook. This one here is, I don't know, what's that, 1/8 of an inch too much? So we're just going to simply eyeball it and take off just a bit. Come down, you can see it's not quite where I want it to be. We're going to take a little bit more. And that right there is basically perfect. That's right in the middle. That's good. Still not done with this weed guard. Before I put it back in the package, I spread them out a little bit more. This does 2 things. First thing, not too much, because I don't want it to flare too much. This does 2 things. One, it gives you a little bit coverage on the sides there. And 2, it lightens that weed guard up even more to help it collapse. Because instead of all the fibers working together as one, you spread them out, and it's a little bit weaker. So that's that. Hey, we're still not done. Still not done with this. I'm gonna trim this down just a little bit more. I'm very picky and very finicky over my jigs and my hooks. So I want it to be perfect before it goes in my box. And the reason you do this before you get on the water is that way you know every jig in your jig box is perfect. You can take it out and you can use it immediately. You don't have to do anything on the water. You're ready to go, and it saves you a ton of time on the water. All right, so that's almost there. But Got one more thing left to do before we put this thing up, and that is always sharpen your hooks. Now I can promise you that this hook right here is fairly sharp, and it's probably going to do a decent job for you. There's two ways to test this. Number one is if you can take the hook and put it on your thumb and it makes a mark, it's probably pretty sharp. But if you really want it to be at its sharpest, it actually needs to grip your thumb, and it's not gripping here at all. I mean, I can just run it across and it does scratch it, but get you a hook sharpener and just run it across it 10 or 12 times. And that is much, and it is gripping my thumb, my fingernail now. So that's much better, and that's ready to go. There's some other things you can do. You can trim the skirt down. It depends on what situation you're in, but that's what I do to my jigs before they even hit the water. And always, I see some people storing their jigs with no real, they just throw them in a box and don't worry about them. Put them back in the package. And then, here's my jig box. Put it back in the package. It keeps it from getting rusted, and it's ready to go. All my jigs are in packages. The ones that aren't in packages are the ones I was recently using. I'm gonna take those out and put them back in packages now. Take care of your stuff. And there's no rust in this box anywhere, none. Because I put everything back in packages. I take care of my stuff. These are $5 a piece, the jigs I use. So take care of your stuff. It'll last you longer. You'll save money in the end. And by doing this right now, instead of when you're on the water, again, you're gonna save you a ton of time. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you soon.